Hey guys, welcome to Midnight Jabber. I am Vishru,
This is Sukrit.
and today we're going to discuss A Scandal in Bohemia, which came out in 1891 and is written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, Sukrit, so why don't you go ahead and give us a quick gist about the story?
Okay, so before A Scandal in Bohemia, what has basically happened is that there have been two novels. First, A Study in Scarlet, and then A Sign of Four. And John Watson is now married to Mary Morstan. And because of his marriage, he's moved out of Baker Street. And he's living with his wife now. And because of this, he hasn't met Sherlock in a very long time. Like, he keeps hearing or reading about exceptional cases that Sherlock has solved, and he ascertains Sherlock's involvement somehow,
Yeah.
but he hasn't actually met till now after a sign of four with Sherlock.
Mhm.
So one day when he's coming back from work, he decides to go meet his friend, and he goes to Baker Street. He goes upstairs in 221B, and Sherlock is there, and he's Sherlock points him to a chair and asks him to read a letter.
In this usual way,
Yeah,
the way Sherlock Holmes is. Right?
yeah. I mean, even before that, when Watson is outside 221B, when he's standing on the street, he can see Sherlock's shadow moving, and he says, "I could see his shadow moving up and down the room, and I knew he was in deep thought, or
Yeah.
something on those lines." And so Sherlock in one of his moods right now,
Mhm.
and so Sherlock points him to his chair, and he gives him a letter to read, and that letter basically says that somebody is going to call upon them tonight to there's a very delicate matter at hand, and somebody is going to call upon Sherlock to ask for his assistance.
Yeah.
And before, so this person hasn't arrived yet, and these guys. So Sherlock, uh, this has happened before, and Sherlock does it again, where he first asks Watson to tell him what he knows about,
Things.
yeah, what
Yeah.
he thinks, and then
Asks
Watson,
him to give his opinion about the thing that he's thinking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like, and Watson tries to do what Sherlock does and looks at the paper and
Yeah.
draws an analogy of where this has come from, who might be coming upon them in
Yeah.
a little while, and like, there's a reason why Sherlock does this every single time, because he's just so proud of his own skills that he first lets Watson execute no skill at all, and then when he does it, he seems more skillful than ever, and that's just Sherlock, and he does that.
Right. Is it to just motivate himself
I mean, Sherlock by
or to
nature
prove
is
himself that he's
no
more
Sherlock.
worthy than others, or
It's
he
it's
does
not
he have
that.
that?
He
Yeah.
sort of. I mean, Sherlock has always been very proud of himself and
Yeah.
what he does, and he knows he's the best.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's so when he executes his skill over somebody, he takes pride in the awe that people hold for him when he does his explanation thing of where what came from, and when he does his own analysis, he waits for that. The reason why he does that is because he's so proud.
So when I was reading the text, whenever Sherlock was doing this, asking for uh, Watson's opinion, what I felt was he was doing that because he wanted to study how Watson would go about it, or how an ordinary person would think about the stuff where he would think about it differently.
Not really, because okay, so I mean, so you haven't read a lot of Sherlock Holmes, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've read it, but you've not read it very recently, or you haven't even read a lot of it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But so there is this thing. I think it's in A Study in Scarlet. It's right after Sherlock has met Watson. Okay, and they're sitting together, and something they're talking about, and something about the solar system comes up, and Sherlock apparently doesn't know that the Earth revolves around the sun,
Okay.
and Watson is literally outraged at the fact that Sherlock doesn't know this, and
How old is he again?
he no, but Sherlock gives a very rational explanation for this, and so Watson is like, how the hell can you not know that the Earth revolves around the solar system? And Sherlock's response to that is something which is very important to know about him. He says, "It doesn't matter to me if the Earth revolves around the sun. It wouldn't matter to me if the Earth went around the moon. Would it make any difference to my existence? No. Would it affect me anyway in any way? No. It doesn't matter to me. People more often than not." So he says your brain is like a closet, and most people will stock it with ideas with rubbish, but I pull all that rubbish out and I only keep in my closet what is important to me. And that is something for sure. So even though he doesn't take normal ordinary opinion into matter, he knows about it. Like, he may not know where the sun revolves around, but it's if he's asking Watson to do something, either he trusts him completely, or he's just doing this to exhibit his own skill.
Right.
I mean, every time he asks Watson to do an analysis, he's executing his own skill. There is no other reason for it.
Right. So back to the story. They get to the
Yes,
letter
sorry,
and
sorry. So,
Sherlock
they read the
asks,
letter,
yeah,
and Sherlock asks Watson to analyze, and Watson does, and he does a bang up job at that. Even Sherlock says, excellent in between, and he remarks, excellent, you're doing excellent today, and he does that. And I think when Watson asks him, "How did I do?" he says, "You did well, but you missed everything of importance." Is that in this story, or was it in some other story?
well, I mean, you can't really tell because
No, we can.
probably,
We have the text.
no, I mean, because probably Sherlock was thinking the same thing that you just said in this story, and it kind of reflects out of the text. But yeah,
Yeah, probably.
I kind of got the sense that he was thinking that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so anyway, wait. I'm looking for this thing right now to see if he says that in this text.
I don't think he says that specifically. It's not written in the text, but it's kind of implied, maybe.
Man, the paper was made in Bohemia.
No, I don't think so.
No. He doesn't. So it's I'm probably getting confused between texts now, but Sherlock does that in some other text. And okay, so this happens, and right when they're finished with the reading the letter, somebody knocks on their door, and they come
Yeah.
in, and so the person
Oh, before he comes in and before he even knocks to the door, it's weird how Sherlock interprets that that's the guy who will knock at my door in some time. That's the
yeah,
one who wrote this letter.
yeah. I mean, if you've read Sherlock enough, you know that he always sees people coming.
And he
Like,
foresees stuff.
what amazes me though is in all of Sherlock's stories, somebody says I'm going to be there at 8. They are there. Nobody's ever late. I mean, I have such a difficult time making it to class. Why aren't people late?
Well,
But
Sherlock is late
sure,
in
but
one part of this text, right?
yeah,
That's weird
we
that
will get.
Sherlock is
We,
late.
yeah.
I don't think he really is late to anything.
So anyway, this guy comes in and he says that he is here and the matter is very delicate, and he's explaining his situation, that the king and the letter, and that the king has photos and everything, and he basically says that I hold a rank in the kingdom of Bohemia and something of that sort. And Sherlock already knows who he actually is, and when he's finished, Sherlock addresses him as the king itself, and that guy is flustered and everything. And finally, they get past this whole exhibit, and so the situation at hand is that the king of Bohemia has is going to get married, and he has some very compromising photos with a woman named Irene Adler, and those photos are to be procured by Sherlock. And
Yeah.
there have been several attempts by the king made on uh,
Of
acquiring
course,
these
yeah.
photos, but they've been unsuccessful. They've tried to rob her, that has also been unsuccessful, and therefore they've called upon Sherlock to give him this task.
Right.
And Sherlock says that, you know, yeah, sure. I mean, uh, we'll. He asks for a couple of details and says that yes, I will have something by tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually Sherlock goes out and he finds things and comes back, and Watson meets him, and then Sherlock tells Watson that, I need you to do something, and he gives him basically a smoke bomb,
Yeah.
and
A
he says,
fake smoke bomb.
yeah, and you have to
I mean,
throw this in when I open the window and you're able to see my hand.
right.
So he gives him the smoke bomb and tells him all that you will throw this in and everything, and he creates this whole plan. And oh, by the way, so Irene Adler has gotten married to a lawyer in the morning. The lawyer's name
Mm.
is Godfrey Norton, and she's gotten married to Norton in the morning.
Right.
And Sherlock was a witness to their wedding, uh, which never struck me like till I was reading it again. Like when I read it earlier, when I read the whole book earlier, it never struck me. But when I read it again, I was like, "Holy shit!" Sherlock was a witness to their wedding, and I was like, "Oh my god, okay." And so he's been a witness to their wedding. He comes back home. He creates this plan, and the next day, then they go, and Sherlock um, puts on this uh, outfit, and he puts on this disguise, and he goes and he pretends to get hurt so that he's called into the house of Irene Adler. And
Right.
once he's there, he eventually ends up getting the window opened, and gives John the signal, and then John throws the smoke bomb in, and then Sherlock Holmes shouts "Fire, fire!" and then everybody just shouts "Fire, fire!" No, sorry, John shouts "Fire, fire!" and then
Mm-hmm.
everybody else shouts "Fire, fire!"
Right.
And 10 minutes later, Sherlock joins John on the street, and they walk together. And then Sherlock explains how the plan worked, and because so there's a dialogue where he says,
Basically, where Watson asks that how would the plan work? I mean, if you would, how would this thing is a plan, all right, but how would you get to know where the photograph is?
right. I mean, John says, I still don't understand what the plan was. And then Sherlock says, I'm quoting now, when he says, when a woman thinks that her house is on fire, her instinct is at once to rush to the thing which she values most. It is a perfectly overpowering impulse, and I have more than once taken advantage of it. In the case of the Darlington substitution scandal, it was of use to me, and also in the Onsworth Castle business. A married woman grabs at her baby, an unmarried one reaches for a jewel box, and that was basically his strategy. And
Yeah.
when I first read it, it's not that ingenious if you think about it. I
Yeah,
mean,
it makes sense.
it makes
But it's
complete sense.
yeah,
But when I first read the story, when I was reading the book the first time, I was like, "Wow, that is genius." I mean, I don't know why, but I mean,
right,
I think that's why he keeps you. So Arthur Conan Doyle always has this thing with Sherlock where he keeps you in the dark, and then executes a plan, and then Sherlock reveals that plan.
yeah. Which is
And
in essence so simple,
yes, but when you
and then
think,
that simplicity you just don't think about it.
it's amazing. So, anyways, so because of this whole plan, so now when Irene Adler heard the whole fire alarm thing, she went immediately to grab the photo. And when she did that, Sherlock said, it's okay, and whatever. And he rushed out of there and he met John. And this happens. And then they go back home. And so these guys reach Baker Street. And one other very odd event, somebody says goodnight, and Sherlock is left wondering who that is. And then they go in and they call upon the king and tell him that we'll go tomorrow and procure the photograph. And when they go in the morning, they go to Irene Adler's house and they knock on the door, and her housekeeper, I think, answers, and she
Yep.
says, and before they can say anything, the housekeeper says, Sherlock Holmes. And he says, yes, I am. And she hands him a letter. And basically, Irene Adler figures out that it was Sherlock Holmes. And she leaves him this letter. And in this letter, she says, that I was warned against you, and even then you fooled me. You are indeed as good as they say. I mean, I'm not quoting right now. I mean, I'm
Right.
just saying on the same lines. Uh, and I came last night to say goodnight to you. So so the person who said goodnight to them outside Baker Street, on Baker Street,
Was
was
Irene
Irene Adler.
This guy doesn't matter.
Yeah, and she does that, and she's left, and the photos are just. She says that the photos are just for her security, and she's not going to use them.
Right.
Which I don't understand, by the way. I mean, if they're for your security, you're going to use them when you're in trouble.
Right. Against the king. But
Yes.
the king would never propose an opportunity for her to showcase those photos, right? The king won't be a trouble. It's like the king won't be a trouble to Irene Adler ever, and then she won't show the photographs to anyone.
No, it's not that.
Like that.
I mean, what she's doing is that she's saying, okay, I have the photographs. If I'm ever in trouble, I can use these photographs to get to the king and ask him for his help, or something of that sort.
Not that kind of trouble. It's like when she's kind of threatened by the king, not any sort of trouble.
And not just by the king, by anybody. She's not mentioning just the king.
Right.
So,
But the king knew that the kind of person Irene is, she would, respect that commitment and would not,
no, you're right. She does say that, I keep it only to safeguard myself and to preserve a weapon
Right.
which will always secure me from any steps which he might take in the future. So she's referring
True.
to the king.
yeah,
And so when the king reads this, I mean, they're reading it aloud, and the king hears this, he says, oh, that woman, oh, that woman.
Yeah.
And he says that now the photo is as safe as it can ever be because he's not going to do anything to her, and so she's never going to use the photo against him.
Yeah.
So they do that, and the king. So Sherlock is now asking for payment, basically,
no,
and
he's actually apologizing to the king that
yeah,
the mission didn't end as you really wanted it to. So, but the king really,
yeah, the
thanks
king's
him
very
that-
happy. Yeah,
yeah, he's happy about it, and so he wants to pay Sherlock.
yeah. So
No.
yeah, he says, I'm immensely indebted to you. Pray tell me, in what can I reward you? This ring. And earlier he had offered Sherlock a province, but Sherlock says something. He said, "Your Majesty has something which I should value even more highly." And the king says, "You have but to name it." And he says, "This photograph." And the king gives him the
So I feel
photograph.
it's the perfect end to the mystery
It
because
is. It is.
I mean that actually suits the character of Sherlock.
It doesn't.
That is, in a way, he's not. He doesn't associate himself with symbols or tokens of his past or his memories or anything. He's not associated with any sort of that. That's how his character is. But it's like a prize for him that she was the one who in the end defeated me.
Yeah, I mean, Sherlock is notoriously known for not having any sentiment or emotions, and at several points in the book, even Watson says that you don't have a heart, and something like that, on those
Right.
lines, not those words exactly. But at this moment, he is. I don't. I mean, till date, I mean, there have been so many adaptations of Sherlock Holmes, and just A Scandal in Bohemia as a story, but so they've put their own spins on this end, okay, but
Right.
it is still a myth till date if Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was hinting at the fact that Sherlock Holmes might have felt something more than just admiration or something more than just respect for Irene Adler, because I mean, he doesn't like
Right.
there is a point. So he's met a lot of women, he's come in contact with them, but in this chapter there is a line where he says that, and what a beautiful woman, and any man would die for her, or something on those lines, and he's never spoken like that about any other woman. And till date, I mean, like, I my only wish is that if I could go back, or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was alive today, I would have wanted to know if he hinted at the fact that Sherlock felt something else. But even so there was a mystery all along the story, and then they solve that mystery, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle leaves you with another mystery at the end. I mean, it's almost like a cliffhanger to the plot, but it isn't a cliffhanger because it is not continued in the next story, just because of that.
Yeah.
But it is amazing how Sir Arthur Conan Doyle put this whole spin on the story and said that, uh, I mean, for the first time in two novels and this story, we've been given just any sign of the fact that Sherlock Holmes might be human.
Right.
And I mean, I've said this same thing before also a lot of times that, I mean, Sherlock Holmes has always been human, and but this is the first time we see it in the novels and in the stories. And there's actually so have you seen the TV show Sherlock, the
Yeah.
one with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Okay, so they did their own adaptation of A Scandal in Bohemia. They called it A Scandal in Belgravia and whatever.
Yeah.
But there is this. So just before that episode, so season one last episode is the Great Game, I think. And at the end of this, so Moriarty has come in, and Moriarty finally faces off with Sherlock. And so Moriarty says, "I will burn the heart right out of you." And Sherlock Holmes says that, "I've been informed on several occasions that I do not have one." And Moriarty says that, "But we both know that's not true." And I mean, it never happens in the book. That is just something they put in the show. But I
Right.
felt that that was something which was a very good spin in the show. Like, the show is actually pretty close to the book, and but this thing is this the line that Moriarty says is not in the book, and they put that thing in there. It's amazing. And the next episode itself is A Scandal in Belgravia, and again, that episode at the end completely hints towards the fact that Sherlock feels something. It also very certainly tells us that Irene Adler felt something for Sherlock, but it doesn't tell us if Sherlock did. It hints at that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've not read Sherlock and everything, but like, even just based on this chapter and the whole thing at the end, what do you think about that?
About the end.
I mean, I mean, the reason I'm asking you is because the character of Sherlock Holmes is not as impressioned into your mind as it is in mine. So any opinion I make is probably based on what I know of Sherlock. But because
Right.
this is very new to you and you've just read this chapter very recently for
Right.
this podcast, you haven't been in touch with Sherlock Holmes for a while now.
Right.
So, I mean, even though you know about Sherlock Holmes, but even just based on this chapter, What do
Right.
you?
So what I think is that in the end, when he demands for that photograph, he basically knows that he's the best in the world and no one can ever defeat him.
Right.
And he's quite proud of that, right?
Right.
And in the end, Irene defeated Sherlock.
Yeah.
And Sherlock really wants that photograph to remind himself that she was the one, she was the woman
The woman.
which he ever refers to,
Yeah.
who defeated him. And just for that remembrance, and just maybe a hint so that he may be in contact with her again and would have an opportunity to defeat her.
But I don't think Sherlock Holmes is that petty. But do you think it's just respect and admiration for somebody who defeated him, or do you feel like? I mean, I certainly felt
A
that.
part of both. A part of both. Yes, yeah, definitely Sherlock respected the fact that he was defeated by Irene, and also he wanted to remember that moment where he was defeated by Irene.
But you don't think he ever felt anything more than admiration than and respect for Irene?
Maybe a bit, but that really didn't play a significant role in this chapter.
I mean, you're also doing the whole Sherlock Holmes things completely based on facts and what we've seen, and don't make assumptions based on what we don't know. I mean, that's just Sherlock Holmes' motto. He said it again and again, and
Yeah.
you're just following that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering that.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect ending to a podcast. But yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, I mean, if we're reading Sherlock Holmes and if we're doing this whole thing, then we should not make any assumptions, at least regarding
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes. I mean, we should just go by the facts and see. Again, that is genius. So Arthur Conan Doyle, the way he's put everything together, and
Yeah.
anyways, that's it for the podcast, everybody.
Alright, guys, that's the time, and hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
पार्ट्स यूज कर ले इसके एड करके बट वो ट्विटर